A low moment for Sandra Bullock turned into hope because of Keanu Reeves. The night was quiet in Los Angeles, but Sandra Bullock felt a storm inside her heart. She had just returned from an event where cameras flashed and people smiled, but when the lights faded, her loneliness grew louder than any crowd. Her career was strong, her name was loved, but her soul carried a weight she could not share with anyone. It was one of those moments when fame feels like a mask, and behind it, the person is fragile and tired. She sat in her living room with the curtains closed. The silence pressed on her chest, making her feel smaller than she was. She thought of the mistakes she had made, the people she had lost, and the emptiness that money and awards could not fill. She whispered to herself, "Maybe I am not as strong as people believe." Her words trembled in the air. That was when her phone buzzed. She looked at the screen and saw a familiar name. It was Keanu Reeves. He had sent a simple message, one line only. "Are you okay?" Sandra stared at it, unsure how to reply. The world saw Keanu as a calm, gentle figure, but she knew he was also someone who carried scars of his own. She typed back slowly, "Not really. Today feels heavy." Within minutes, her phone rang. His voice on the other end was steady, soft, and patient. "Then let me come by," he said. Sandra hesitated, but something inside her longed for a kind presence. She whispered, "Okay." When Keanu arrived, he did not come with big words or empty comfort. He simply sat across from her and looked at her with eyes that carried quiet strength. His presence itself felt like a light in a dark room. He asked nothing about the event, nothing about her career, nothing about the world outside. He only asked about her heart. Sandra broke down. Tears flowed, and for the first time in weeks, she did not stop herself from crying. She told him how empty she felt, how lonely her nights had become, how the pressure of being strong all the time made her feel like she was breaking. Keanu listened without interruption. His silence was not cold, it was respectful. Like he understood that sometimes a person does not need advice, only space to be heard. After a while, he leaned closer and said, "You do not have to carry it all alone. People think strength means never falling, but real strength is knowing when to let someone help you stand." His words cut through her despair like a beam of light. Sandra wiped her tears, surprised at how much relief came from his simple kindness. She looked at him and whispered, "How do you always stay so calm? How do you never lose hope?" Keanu smiled faintly and said, "Because I have lost before. I know what it means to feel empty, but I also know that every low moment can teach us something if we let it. Pain does not last forever, but the lessons it gives us can." The room grew quiet again, but this time it was not heavy. It was peaceful. Sandra realized that in her lowest moment, hope had walked into her home in the form of a friend who understood silence better than noise. This was only the beginning. Neither of them knew that this night would lead to something much deeper, a journey of resilience, humility, and kindness that would touch more than just their lives. The night opened a new path the next morning. Sunlight entered Sandra's home through the small gaps of her curtains. She woke up with swollen eyes, but her heart felt a little lighter. She remembered the quiet night before, the way Keanu had sat with her without judgment, the way his calm voice had reminded her that she was not alone. It had been years since she had felt such comfort. She made coffee and sat by the window. Her thoughts drifted to the world outside. People believed her life was perfect. Magazines showed her smiling. Movies showed her strong characters. Interviews showed her full of grace. But inside, she had been carrying battles no one saw. Last night proved something. Strength could be shared. It did not have to be carried alone. As she sipped her coffee, her phone rang again. Keanu's voice was steady, just like the night before. "How are you this morning?" Sandra smiled faintly. "Better. Thank you for being here." He paused, then said, "Would you like to step out today? Sometimes a walk helps more than 1,000 words." Sandra thought about it. Part of her wanted to hide, but another part of her longed for fresh air. She agreed. Later that afternoon, they met in a quiet park, away from cameras and crowds. Keanu walked beside her at a slow pace, letting her set the rhythm. Children were playing in the distance, and the sound of their laughter mixed with the rustling of leaves. Sandra breathed deeply, feeling the air in her lungs. After a few moments of silence, she spoke. "Do you ever feel like the world only sees what it wants to see in you? Like they don't see the real person?" Keanu looked at her and nodded. "All the time. People imagine me as a symbol of calm, of strength, but they don't know the nights I have cried, the losses I have felt, the times I almost gave up. Every person has a hidden side, and sometimes it is heavier than the side people celebrate." Sandra stopped walking for a moment. She looked at him, searching his eyes. "Then how do you keep going?" His answer was simple, yet powerful. "By remembering that kindness is stronger than despair. By focusing on the little things I can do for others. Pain becomes smaller when you share light." Those words sank deep into her. She realized he was not trying to inspire her with perfect wisdom. He was speaking from his own truth, from a life that had known pain but refused to give in. They continued walking until they reached a bench under a large tree. They sat down, and the shade covered them from the warm sun. Sandra felt tears form again, but this time they were not tears of despair. They were tears of relief. She whispered, "Maybe my life has been missing this. Not fame, not success, but these simple moments of being human with someone who cares." Keanu leaned back and looked at the branches above. The world teaches us to chase bigger things, but sometimes the most healing moments are the smallest. A quiet walk, a kind word, a hand when you are falling. Those are the things that stay. As the wind moved through the leaves, Sandra felt a strange peace. She realized she did not need to hide her struggles. She did not need to wear the mask of perfection every day. She could be real. What she did not know yet was that this walk, this conversation, would be the seed of a bigger change. Soon, both of them would find themselves pulled into moments that tested not only their friendship, but also their belief in kindness, resilience, and the strength of human connection. For Sandra, the low moment had begun to turn into hope. For Keanu, it was another chance to remind himself that even the smallest act of presence could change someone's life. The quiet bond grows stronger. The days after their walk felt different for Sandra. She was still facing her inner battles, but the heaviness was not crushing anymore. Every time she remembered Keanu's calm words, she felt like she could breathe again. It was not that her problems had disappeared, but now she knew someone understood. One evening, Sandra found herself sitting in her kitchen, staring at a pile of untouched scripts. She had been offered several roles, but none of them excited her. Fame no longer felt like a victory. It felt like a burden. She wondered if she had lost her spark. Her phone buzzed again. It was Keanu. He asked if she wanted to meet for dinner. She hesitated, but something inside her whispered that she needed his presence. She agreed. They met at a small restaurant tucked away in a quiet street. It was not a glamorous place, but it was warm and filled with the smell of homemade food. The owner greeted them with kindness, and they sat at a corner table where nobody bothered them. As they ate, Sandra finally opened up. "I feel like I'm losing myself. I don't even know what I want anymore. I used to love acting because it made me feel alive, but now it feels like I'm just playing a role for everyone else. When the cameras are gone, I don't even recognize myself." Keanu listened carefully. He did not rush her words. When she stopped, he put down his fork and leaned slightly closer. "It is normal to feel lost sometimes. I have felt that too. But I think it is not about losing yourself. It is about finding yourself again in a new way. Every stage of life asks us to discover who we are now, not who we were yesterday." Sandra looked at him, her eyes softening. "So you're saying maybe this is not the end. Maybe it's the beginning of something new." Keanu gave a faint smile. "Exactly. The hardest moments often carry the seeds of the next chapter." His words touched her deeply. She realized he was not telling her what to do. He was reminding her that change could be a gift. As they continued talking, the conversation grew lighter. They shared stories from their early days in Hollywood, laughing at memories of auditions gone wrong, of cheap apartments, of nights when they wondered if they would ever succeed. Those stories reminded Sandra of something important. She had not always been surrounded by lights and cameras. She had once been just a young woman chasing a dream with hope in her heart. After dinner, they walked out into the cool night air. The street was quiet, and the city lights glowed softly in the distance. Sandra stopped for a moment and said, "Thank you for not treating me like an image. Thank you for treating me like a person." Keanu looked at her and answered simply, "That's because you are a person first. The world may see a star, but I see someone who deserves kindness like anyone else." Her eyes filled with tears again, but this time they were not from pain. They were from gratitude. That night, as she lay in bed, Sandra thought about how rare it was to find a friend who offered comfort without expecting anything in return. Keanu had shown her that respect, humility, and kindness were not just words. They were actions. What neither of them knew was that this bond would soon be tested. Life had a way of bringing storms when people least expected them, and both Sandra and Keanu would soon face situations that would challenge their strength, their friendship, and their faith in hope. But for now, in the quiet of her room, Sandra felt something she had not felt in weeks. She felt safe. When storms return. A few weeks passed, and Sandra started to feel stronger. She was slowly learning to live with her emotions instead of hiding from them. The quiet conversations with Keanu had given her courage to face herself again. But life has a way of testing people when they least expect it. One afternoon, Sandra received a call from her agent. He sounded urgent. "A magazine is about to publish a story about you," he said. "They claim you are falling apart, that you are unstable, that you are rejecting work because you can't handle the pressure." The words hit her like cold water. Sandra's heart sank. It was as if her most private struggles were being turned into headlines for the world to judge. She hung up the call and sat frozen in her chair. The fear returned, heavy and suffocating. She imagined the faces of people she admired, the fans who looked up to her, all reading those words. She felt exposed, weak, and ashamed. That evening, she called Keanu. Her voice trembled. "They are going to write things about me that are not true. They are going to turn my pain into gossip. I can't go through this again." Keanu listened quietly, letting her spill the panic out of her chest. When she finally stopped, his voice came, steady and soft. "Then let's meet. You should not sit with this alone." They met at her home. Sandra opened the door with tears in her eyes. Keanu stepped inside without hesitation. He did not bring flowers. He did not bring speeches. He brought presence. He sat beside her on the couch, close enough for her to feel that she was not alone. "Why does the world take joy in tearing people apart?" she whispered. "Why can't they see the human side?" Keanu looked at her and said, "Because the world often forgets that famous people are human too. They think stories are entertainment. But you must remember something. The truth of who you are is not defined by their words. It is defined by how you choose to respond." Sandra looked at him through her tears. "But what if people believe them?" Keanu leaned closer. "Those who matter will not believe lies, and those who believe lies never truly mattered." His calmness settled her racing heart. She realized that while she could not control the headlines, she could control how much power she gave them. Over the next few days, the magazine article came out, filled with sharp words meant to wound. The media spread it fast. Sandra felt the sting, but this time she was not crushed. Keanu checked on her daily, reminding her to breathe, to walk, to focus on the things that grounded her. One evening, they sat together again. Sandra asked him quietly, "How do you always know what to say?" Keanu shook his head. "I don't always know. I just know what pain feels like, and I know what I needed when I was in it. Sometimes the best thing is not advice. It's reminding someone they are not alone." Those words struck deep. She realized Keanu's wisdom did not come from books or quotes. It came from his own scars, and that made every word he spoke real. Slowly, the storm of the headlines passed. People moved on to other stories, other names. But something had changed inside Sandra. Instead of being broken by the storm, she had discovered her own resilience. And through it all, the bond with Keanu grew stronger, becoming something rare. A friendship built not on fame or convenience but on respect, humility, and kindness. What they did not know was that this storm was only a preparation. Something even greater, something unexpected, was waiting just ahead. And when it arrived, it would test their hearts more than ever before. The hidden wound. After the noise of the headlines faded, Sandra tried to return to her normal routine. She read new scripts, attended small meetings, and kept smiling for those around her. But inside, she still carried an ache. Even though Keanu's support had given her strength, the wounds from being judged and exposed had not fully healed. One evening, as she sat in her quiet home, she thought about her past. Memories surfaced. The times she had trusted people who later betrayed her. The nights she cried alone after heartbreak. The moments when success felt hollow because her heart was tired. She realized that her fear of judgment did not come only from the magazines. It came from years of carrying scars in silence. When Keanu visited the next day, he noticed the distant look in her eyes. "Something is still heavy on you," he said gently. Sandra hesitated. She wanted to brush it off, to say she was fine. But Keanu's eyes were patient, waiting without pressure. Slowly, she whispered, "There are things I never speak about. Wounds I keep locked inside. Sometimes I feel if I open them, I'll break apart." Keanu nodded softly. "I understand. But sometimes the only way to heal is to let someone see the wound. Hiding it only makes it deeper." His words lingered in the room. Sandra felt her chest tighten. For years, she had built walls, even around friends, but Keanu's kindness made those walls tremble. Tears filled her eyes as she whispered, "I am scared of being weak in front of people. Everyone thinks I'm strong. If they see my broken side, maybe they will stop respecting me." Keanu leaned closer, his voice calm and steady. True respect does not come from pretending to be perfect. It comes from being real. People respect honesty more than masks. And the right people will never love you less for being human. Those words unlocked something in her. She began to share, slowly at first, then more openly. She spoke about heartbreaks that had left her empty, about trust broken by those she once held close, about the nights when she questioned her worth despite her success. Her voice trembled, but Keanu did not interrupt. He let her pour out the pain she had hidden for years. When she finished, silence filled the room. She feared judgment, but Keanu's eyes were gentle. He said only one thing, "Thank you for trusting me." The simplicity of those words struck her deeply. There was no pity, no judgment, only gratitude and respect. For the first time in years, Sandra felt lighter. It was as if releasing the hidden pain had freed her from chains she did not realize she still carried. Later that night, as Keanu left her home, he paused at the door. "Remember," he said softly, "your wounds do not make you less. They make you more. They are proof you survived." Sandra stood in the doorway after he left, holding on to those words. She realized that her journey was not about being flawless. It was about being real, about standing even after falling. But just as hope began to rise inside her, life prepared another twist. Soon, a moment would arrive that would test not only her strength but also Keanu's. It would be a challenge neither of them had expected, one that would demand courage, sacrifice, and the deepest form of kindness. When kindness is tested, the weeks that followed felt calmer. Sandra carried a new lightness in her steps, knowing that she no longer had to carry her pain alone. Keanu's presence had become like a shield around her, quiet, steady, and unshakable. But life has a way of testing bonds when they are at their strongest. One afternoon, Sandra received an unexpected call. A close friend from her past was in trouble, facing financial ruin and emotional collapse. This was a person who had once stood by Sandra in her early days, but over the years they had drifted apart after misunderstandings. Hearing the voice on the other end, filled with desperation, shook Sandra deeply. She sat in silence after the call, torn between anger from the past and compassion for the present. Her heart whispered forgiveness, but her mind reminded her of the hurt. In that confusion, she called Keanu. When he arrived, she explained everything. Her words tumbled out, filled with doubt. This person hurt me years ago. They left when I needed them. And now they call me because they are desperate. What am I supposed to do? Part of me wants to help, but another part wants to walk away. Keanu listened quietly, as he always did. When she finished, he said slowly, "The hardest test of kindness is when it is given to those who once failed us. Forgiveness is not about forgetting the pain. They did cause it. But if you choose compassion, you are freeing yourself from carrying bitterness. The question is, do you want to carry anger, or do you want to carry peace?" Sandra felt his words cut into her heart. She thought of the nights she had wished someone would reach out to her when she was in despair. She thought of how Keanu had sat with her when she was at her lowest. Slowly, she nodded. "Then I will help. Not because they deserve it, but because I need to live without anger." Together, they visited the old friend. The meeting was heavy at first. The friend broke down, apologizing for the mistakes of the past, admitting fear, admitting weakness. Sandra felt her chest ache as she listened. For a moment, she almost turned away, but then Keanu gently placed his hand on her shoulder, grounding her. She spoke with calmness. "You hurt me once, but I will not let that hurt control who I am today. I will help you, not because of the past, but because I believe everyone deserves a chance to stand again." Her words brought tears to the friend's eyes. They held her hands, trembling, and whispered, "Thank you." In that moment, Sandra realized the power of kindness. It was not just about helping strangers or being admired by the world. It was about choosing light even when darkness felt easier. It was about breaking the cycle of pain with forgiveness. As they left the meeting, Sandra turned to Keanu. "You knew I had to face this, didn't you?" Keanu gave a small smile. "I knew you had the strength. Sometimes we only see our courage when we are tested." That night, as Sandra lay in bed, she reflected on everything. The storms, the headlines, the hidden wounds, the test of forgiveness. Each step had brought her closer to herself. Each challenge had shown her that resilience is not about never falling. It is about rising with dignity, with humility, and with kindness. But she also sensed something else. Her journey with Keanu was not finished. There was still one more chapter waiting. One final test that would reveal the deepest truth about their bond and the hope they carried together. The light that lasted, the weeks passed, and Sandra began to feel like a different person. The storms that once threatened to break her had now shaped her into someone stronger, someone more grounded. But she knew she had not reached this place alone. Keanu's steady presence had been like a lamp in a dark tunnel, guiding her forward step by step. Yet even as peace returned, life had one last test waiting. One evening, Sandra and Keanu were invited to a charity event for children who had lost their families. The hall was filled with laughter, music, and hope, but also with stories of pain. Children with bright eyes but heavy pasts moved around the room, holding hands, clinging to one another. As Sandra looked at them, something inside her broke open. She saw her own struggles reflected in their eyes. The feeling of being unseen, the fear of being forgotten, the weight of silent pain. Tears filled her eyes. She turned to Keanu and whispered, "How do they smile after everything they have been through?" Keanu's eyes softened. Because children know how to hold on to hope, even in the darkest times. Maybe that is why they teach us more than we teach them. During the event, a young girl approached Sandra shyly. She held out a small drawing, a picture of two figures holding hands under a bright sun. "This is you," the girl said softly, pointing at one figure. "And this is him," she added, pointing at Keanu. "You look like people who bring light." Sandra's heart trembled. She knelt down, hugged the child gently, and whispered, "Thank you." At that moment, she realized the journey she had walked through her pain was not just for herself. Her healing could become a light for others too. Later, on their way home, she turned to Keanu. "You changed my life. You walked with me when I could not walk alone. How do I ever thank you for that?" Keanu shook his head slowly, his voice calm as always. "You don't need to thank me. You found your own strength. All I did was remind you it was still there. And now, you are passing that strength to others." "That is thanks enough." His words left her silent, but her heart was full. She knew he was right. He had not carried her. He had stood beside her, reminding her of who she truly was. In the days that followed, Sandra began speaking more openly about her struggles, not as a weakness but as a story of resilience. She used her voice to inspire others, to remind them that even in the lowest moments, there can be light. Keanu stood quietly beside her, never seeking recognition, never asking for praise. He was simply there, steady as always, embodying the humility that had guided her back to hope. Their bond became more than friendship, more than comfort. It became a living reminder that respect, kindness, and resilience can change lives, not through grand gestures, but through simple presence, through honesty, through choosing light again and again. One evening, as they sat together watching the sun dip below the horizon, Sandra whispered, "I thought my story was ending when you first walked into my home that night. But now I see it was only beginning. The low moment gave me the chance to rise again." Keanu looked at the fading light and said quietly, "And every time we rise, we give someone else permission to rise too." The silence that followed was not heavy. It was filled with peace, with gratitude, with the quiet knowledge that what they had built together would last far beyond them. For Sandra, hope had returned. For Keanu, kindness had once again proved to be stronger than despair. And for both of them, the journey had shown one truth that would never fade. When life takes you to your lowest point, sometimes the light you need comes not from perfection, but from the gentle hand of someone who chooses to stand beside you,